So in our last video, we talked about the different states of matter, but now we're going to talk about how matter changes states, how it gets from one state to another, which is called a phase change. So let's start out with a solid and a liquid. So when we're going from a solid to a liquid, that's called melting. And what it means is that we're increasing the amount of energy that's in the solid. And we know this because we increase the temperature, and it starts to melt, and we get a liquid. If we have a liquid, and we decrease the amount of energy in it, it freezes, and we get a solid. So going from ice to water is melting. We're adding energy. Going from water to ice is freezing. We can do the same thing with lava. Lava is liquid rock. If we take away the energy by decreasing the temperature, okay, this is what we get, this black rock. If we were to increase the temperature in this enough, we could melt it and we would end up with lava again. So the melting point is the temperature at which a solid turns into a liquid. And the freezing point is the temperature at which a liquid turns into a solid. And for a substance, that's going to be the same temperature. So at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, ice starts to melt. That's water's melting point. It's the same thing if we have water. If we can decrease the temperature to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, it will start to freeze. It's the freezing point. We can do the same thing with iron. Solid iron, like in this cannonball, if we were to increase the temperature to 2,795 degrees Fahrenheit, we get liquid iron. With this liquid iron, once it starts to cool, and it reaches 2,795 degrees Fahrenheit, it starts to turn into a solid. So that's its freezing point. Now let's talk about going from a liquid to a gas. So going from a liquid to a gas is called vaporization or evaporation. So we're increasing the amount of energy in that liquid, and we're turning the liquid into a gas. If we have a gas, and we start to decrease the amount of energy, that gas is going to condense. It's called condensation, and it's going to turn back into a liquid. So if we have our water and we heat it up, it's going to turn into steam or water vapor, okay, because it's going to evaporate. That steam, when it cools down, okay, is going to turn into condensation. So the vaporization or boiling point is the temperature at which a liquid turns into a gas. And the condensation point, which is the temperature at which a gas turns into a liquid, those are going to be the same. Just like our freezing and melting point, boiling point and condensation point, or vaporization point and condensation point are the same. So going from a liquid to a gas for water is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. For water, going from water vapor or steam to a liquid, once it cools down to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, that's when you start to see it condense and turn back into a liquid. So you can think of it like this. Look at this chart, solid, liquid, gas. Okay? So going from a solid to a liquid is melting point. Going from a liquid to a solid is freezing point. Going from gas to liquid is condensation. Going from liquid to gas is vaporization or evaporation. Now, you can go directly from a solid to a gas. That's called sublimation. And you can go from a gas directly to a solid, which is called deposition. And just like freezing point and melting point, that's going to be the same temperature. So here's a summary of the different physical changes in the states of matter. And we call it a physical change because it's changing the form of the substance, but it's not changing the substance chemically. So it's going to have the same elements and atoms, and it's the same molecule. It just looks different. So nothing is being done to it chemically to change it. It's just being done physically. So again, melting point is the temperature at which a solid changes into a liquid. Freezing point is the temperature at which a liquid changes into a solid. boiling point is the temperature at which a liquid changes into a gas. Evaporation is very similar to boiling point. The only difference is that evaporation only occurs at the surface of the liquid, whereas boiling point occurs throughout a liquid. So if you think of a puddle of water after it's rained, that water is going to evaporate. So the surface of the water is going to evaporate, right? It's not going to stay as a puddle forever. But we don't come outside and find puddles of water that are boiling on the sidewalk. So what's happening is that surface of the liquid is evaporating, and as each layer gets evaporated, there's a new surface layer until it gets down to dry ground. Condensation point is the temperature at which a gas turns into a liquid. And sublimation is when a solid skips the liquid phase and becomes a gas. And an example of that is dry ice, which is frozen carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide that's been frozen, it skips that liquid phase. It goes right from a gas into a solid. And we see it a lot for creating fog, like in theater shows. Sometimes if you've been at a dance or a wedding, you might see the fog. A lot of plays often use them. So that's what you would use dry ice for. And here are just some examples of freezing points, melting points, and boiling or condensation points. So if you look at them, tungsten, for example, its melting point, freezing point, is 6,170 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the greatest for any metal element. And carbon, just a little bit greater than that, 6,332 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure you go to Edmodo and do the quiz.